All right. Well, I'm here with Caitlin, and we're going to talk about Crypto API, among other things. But first, there's an Al Jazeera article, which I thought was interesting, saying in one of the American states, I think Connecticut, um, everybody's banning TikTok now. Trump administration got mad at it. Now the Biden administration is mad at it and saying TikTok is going to interfere in our politics and corrupt our children and stuff. And so Connecticut, when they got the information saying you should ban TikTok, asked the FBI, is there any actual evidence that TikTok has done anything bad? And they never got any, because it does seem to be one small step from just racism. It's possible that TikTok might do something bad because they're a Chinese company and the Chinese government might make them do something bad someday. Therefore, we should ban it. And so Connecticut decided not to ban it on the grounds that, you haven't actually shown they've done anything wrong yet. You just have this sort of paranoid fear that they might. And that's all it seems to be. And I heard Scott Galloway rave about how we have to ban TikTok because they'll brainwash our children to hate capitalism. Maybe, but they aren't doing that. So anyway, that's where we're at. And then Caitlin has got another article about the layoffs.
Yeah, so it turns out that there's a good reason why the layoffs are happening. And it's all spelled out in this article by The Verge. So this is the article. It is written by Elizabeth Lapato. And it basically, to summarize the entire article, there are two main forces that are driving the layoffs. One is investors who don't understand anything, and stupid managers who don't understand anything. And those are what are causing all the layoffs. And so the article talks about a few different companies. There's Meta, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Amazon, and Spotify, Stripe. And I think after this article was written, IBM announced layoffs.
I think maybe even Apple.
And even Apple. And the reason why they're doing it is not because it saves them money, but because investors are sort of narrow-minded and they're only looking at sort of revenue per employee hired. And if you have a lot of employees and you're generating a good amount of revenue, and let's say each employee only generates, let's say $10,000 of revenue over their base salary, you could make your numbers look better by reducing your number of employees, and then have it go up to $11,000 per employee. Even though you're making less money overall, you can make the numbers look nicer to investors, and the investors are stupid and buy it. So that's that's one reason. The other reason is stupid managers, because figuring out how to sort of restructure and reorganize and figure out how to best run a company is hard work. And if they're just told, oh, we can just lay people off, they'll do that. Let me read this one paragraph here. The author writes, so I called up someone who's been studying this kind of thing for a long time, Jeffrey Pfizer, a professor at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. When I asked him about the similarities in company statements, his answer was succinct. The tech companies are copying each other. Quote, I think Peter Drucker, who is widely known as a father of management thinking, was quoted as saying something to the effect of, thinking is hard, which is why most managers don't do it. There you go.
Yep, absolutely. They just copy each other.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there's this persistent belief. See, this reminds me of college teaching. There's this persistent belief, like Microsoft, every 3 months you have to fire the bottom 10% because you have to cut off the dead wood. And this is Silicon Valley's meritocracy, but it assumes you can measure merit. And this is like college teachers that think they really are proving that you deserve an A and you deserve a B. And that is a mistake made by amateurs, that haven't been in the business long enough. You eventually come to realize your idea of measuring which one are the high performers and which one aren't is a whole lot less accurate than you think it is.
Yeah, and I'm always reminded of the fictional character House, who, if I were the manager of, even though they are the best, they're basically Sherlock Holmes for, doctors, I would have them fired immediately from the way that they treat patients. There's more than one way to look at an employee. You have not only their technical skills, how well they work on a team, they have all these things and they can all influence each other. And if all you're worried about is, how good, of an engineer they are, you can end up with a very toxic environment.
Yes, and that's very much another part of the tech bro thing, that you can be a genius and any amount of bad behavior is tolerated if you're a genius.
Nope.
And I believe the original Sherlock Holmes, I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a doctor, and he based Sherlock Holmes on a doctor who was able to diagnose diseases.
Yep.
Anyway, all right. And so here's the article I thought was the most exciting. CryptoAPI is a Windows API call to handle cryptography, and Akamai went and reverse engineered a recent patch and figured out what happened, which is incredible. CryptoAPI is used by many utilities like curl and PowerShell and others to do cryptographic signatures, use certificate validation, not just HTTPS, but a lot of other things. And it was using just the MD5 signature of the certificate to verify the certificate. So all you had to do was generate a fake certificate with an MD5 collision, which is not that hard to do, and you could spoof certificates. So it is kind of amazing. I remember it was, I think, 14 years ago or something when people went to DEF CON and spoofed an HTTPS certificate based on MD5. So this is an amazing flaw to persist so long, and they just patched it a few months ago. And they now have proof of concept code to fool it. And they say a lot of people have not put on the patch. They say only 1% of enterprise level data centers have put on this patch. So they're all still vulnerable to this really fundamental breaking of the cryptographic security on Windows. So, and then you've got these prisoners taking classes.
Yeah. So this article reminded me of you, Sam. So the Insider has an article written by Brittany Nguyen, talking about a Harvard professor who put up his lectures for free over on the internet.
What kind of pervert would do that?
I don't know. Someone, I might be looking at someone very similar to that. And it was for computer science classes. And who ended up taking the classes online were prisoners. And so this Harvard professor, accidentally or maybe intently, I don't know, ended up having a huge following of prisoners that absolutely loved the work that he's doing. And it really goes to show you that, our educational system is kind of messed up. Like we put a lot of our money into institutions like Stanford and Harvard. And these are the people that really don't need education, right? They or that level of support. But these prisoners absolutely do. But they're ending up getting it for free. So it really shows you that education really should be for everyone. Gating the community off from the people who need it most is hurting society, as a whole. And of course, this computer science professor, and just by the fact of just sharing his materials online, is helping rehabilitate countless numbers of prisoners, and presumably they're going to get out of prison and maybe get a job with FTX. Who knows?
Or they might become powerful hackers and steal money or something.
Exactly.
This actually did happen to me indirectly. Years ago, I was in charge of our CompTIA partnership. We became a CompTIA partner. We could get discount vouchers for A+ and Net+ and stuff. And I just put up a web page explaining how to get a discount voucher. And then I started getting emails from the A+ teachers. Who are these strange people getting these vouchers? Are they in your class? I said, no, I thought they were in your class. And they were prisoners in a Tennessee jail. Somebody told them, and like a whole bunch of them were getting these discount vouchers.
There you go.
Yeah.
You see, you're wonderful students all over the world, all in jails all over the world. But no, I mean, this really does help them. I'm sort of cracking jokes, but no, I mean, it really is helpful. I'm really glad that these resources are available to the people that need it the most.
Yeah. And, I've always wanted to see more prison reform, because prison is just sort of a pit you throw people into where they're abused and made worse. But it ought to be a school where they teach you useful skills and politeness and stuff. So when you get out, you can get a job and you don't go back to prison. It's ridiculous. It ought to basically be a military academy. That's what prison ought to be.
Yeah. I mean, it should be, someone looks at your resume, see you just got out of prison, and they should see that the same thing as you just got out of, college or a trade school or something,
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but certainly prison ought to be about correcting whatever defects caused you to go to prison so you won't do it again.
Right. Or give options out, because most people don't want to be criminals.
Right. They fell into it because they never learned any job skills and they
Yeah.
don't have any interpersonal skills or something like that. And you should be correcting those problems.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And so the Department of Justice is suing Google, claiming that their ad dominance amounts to monopoly and threatening to break them up, although the threat to break them up is probably not very realistic. They often threaten this. The last thing they broke up was AT&T 40 years ago, although they got pretty close to breaking Microsoft up in 1998, around that time. So they are accusing Google of serious anti-competitive conduct, acquiring competitors, forcing adoptions of Google tools, distorting auction competition, and auction manipulation when people bid for keywords. So Google probably should be forced to pay a fine and amend their practices. But in the most extreme case, they want to break up Google from DoubleClick, where Google's other activities will have to be separated from their ad targeting activities. But I think all the money comes from ad targeting. So I don't know how that would work. And I know it reminds me of talk about breaking up Amazon. And see, Amazon, in fact, makes all their money from AWS now. Their other activities don't really run much profit. Those the web hosting services, it was the big money maker there. Anyway, it shows some appetite on the government to actually regulate big tech, and we'll see what comes of it. Usually, big tech manages to fight back so far. And their argument always is, and has been back to Bill Gates, that the government should not regulate technology because technology changes so fast that the law can't keep up. And that's what Bill Gates said. He said, you don't need to break us up for being a monopoly. Even though they owned like 99% of the desktops, he said, we're running at full speed to keep up. And if we stumble, we'll fall behind. And that's what happened. Without any government intervention, Microsoft failed to innovate, and Apple and Linux and everything moved up and took an Android and stole their lunch. And now they're just a small player by comparison. So anyway, and the last one you've got is the T1000.
Yes. So let's pull up the browser here. So science alert, truly a science alert. Be on high alert. This is a article by Michelle Starr, and it's titled "Scientists Create Shape-Shifting Humanoid Robot That Can Liquefy and Reform." And we can see an example here of this GIF of the metal alloy going through some bars. And when I saw this, I knew exactly what was going on. This is very similar to a similar robot that I saw earlier, which is it uses sort of a magnetic putty to sort of squirm and move around. So there's magnets below and it squirms around. But this, of course, is metal. So what's going on? Well, the metal being used, I can almost assure you, is gallium. In fact, I'm pretty sure I read in the article too that it's gallium, but they also embed some iron or some sort of magnetic material in the gallium. So at room temperature, gallium is a solid metal, and when you heat it up slightly, it becomes liquid. Now, this is very funny if you are in the chemistry department, because it's a very common prank to make silverware out of gallium, and when you use the silverware, the fork and everything sort of dissolves in your mouth. And it's very funny. And gallium's non-toxic, so it's very, very funny. But you can heat up this metal a little above room temperature, and it will turn into a liquid. And then you can have the magnets below sort of slide it through any sort of grate. And that's what they're doing. It's a little deceiving. It's not sort of, as far as I can tell, it's not moving on its own. There are sort of magnets involved that you can't really see. But with the combination of magnets, this thing can turn into different shapes, get through things, solidify. And there are, of course, many applications for this. One, of course, being creating the T1000, I think it's, what was it in the Terminator 2? Was it the T1000?
I think it was the T1000, the robot that can just melt and slide through bars and stuff.
Yeah. So it can melt and go through bars and stuff like that. But I think from a medical perspective, and also search and rescue perspective, any robot that can sort of change shape and get through tight obstacles would be very, very useful. And they
like to send into mines or collapsed buildings.
Right. Or let's say you have a stomach clog, you can have the robot go in and sort of fix the clog or expand to like open up an area in your stomach.
I guess you could do the blood vessels too, like that one where they widen the blocked arteries.
Exactly. So there's a lot of useful potential things that you could do with this. Once again, though, it is not sort of self-contained. The robot itself cannot sort of move on its own. It needs the help of external magnets. But it's good to see, and I do like to see the apocalyptic type technology being developed. So
yeah. Well, that's a good one.
yep.
All right. Well, that's it for this one. And being Friday, we'll be back on Tuesday.